Taskalawit, Kaliloitsa, good evening and welcome. Inamwinik dwash titoka timki sawitqpu, ka inamwinik dwash shuyapo timki, Janine Gordon. My Indian name is Good Digger, more formally interpreted as People of the Wild Carrot. My English name is Janine Gordon. I am an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation and descendant of Chief Joseph, the senior warrior of the Nez Perce, and Chief Pyo Mox Mox of the Walla Wallas. My role at Whitman College is Special Assistant to the President for Native American Outreach, and I am happy to serve as our MC for this evening's event. Welcome to Pashkupa, the place of the wild sunflowers. Pashkupa is our traditional Cayuse name for this area of Walla Walla that lies within the traditional homelands of the Wayilitpu, Walulapum, and the Imatlama Tumchlama, the Cayuse, Walla Walla, and Umatilla tribes. Since time immemorial, we have engaged in traditional, familial, and economical activities, with much of that interaction taking place at the confluences of the Yakima, Snake, and Walla Walla rivers. Our three tribes connected with other tribes in the Northern Plateau throughout Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, and as far as southwestern Canada and eastern Montana. The Walla Walla Valley is the heartland of Cayuse country, and it is the location of the Walla Walla Treaty Council of 1855, where our ancestors negotiated treaties with the United States government to ensure that our sovereignty and lifeways would be preserved and protected for future generations. This was necessary due to westward expansion set in motion by legislative acts and historical events as a result of the American Revolution, including the Northwest Ordinance passed under the Articles of Confederation, the Louisiana Purchase, and the Lewis and Clark Expedition. On behalf of Northwest Public Broadcasting and Whitman College, we are happy to see so many familiar faces and also some new ones here with us tonight. I want to thank our tribal delegates and leadership for being here with us tonight as well. Thank you for joining us for this special preview of the soon-to-be-released Ken Burns documentary series and conversation on tribal sovereignty. Participants and audience members, each one of you helps make this event special and unforgettable. Tonight's schedule of events will include a 5-minute film with local interviews by Northwest Public Broadcasting, a 26-minute preview of the new documentary series called The American Revolution by Ken Burns, Sarah Botstein, and David Schmidt, a brief address by our keynote speaker, a conversation with our tribal sovereignty panel, and an audience Q&A session. I will then wrap up the event with some closing remarks, and with that, let's begin.
What do you know about the Revolutionary War?
That war was... Shoot, it's been a hot minute.
Revolutionary War, well...
I don't know about history that much.
That is the one where the U.S. fought the British for their independence.
There's just a lot of people who just hate taxes.
Unfair taxes.
Taxation
without representation.
The Revolutionary War.
Like other people of color, we fought in a war that was not ours.
Some people didn't know what was happening, like kids.
Remember 1776?
A lot of American history has to do with the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are.
It was farmers and people really with a strong sense of what they wanted to accomplish.
Pretty much succeeded from England, kicked them back across the ocean.
We had some people come to our lands.
It was a fight for
our independence.
Helped showed them the way around and how we lived off the land.
It was against the British's tyranny.
We dumped the tea in the harbor.
What I know about the Revolutionary War:
land, greed.
It was over the 13 colonies, and it was for our independence.
What is your favorite food here in America?
That's a good one.
My favorite American dish is the hamburgers.
We like to keep it simple,
A cheeseburger and fries.
Pretty much anything that's deep fried.
Fried bird.
elephant ears,
Fried chicken.
Are chicken tenders an American food?
chicken noodle soup, hamburgers, cheeseburgers. I love Chipotle.
The buns, the lettuce, the beef.
Nice Swiss mushroom burger. A classic cheeseburger.
Relish, mustard, ketchup.
Simple hamburger.
A nice steak that's cooked just right.
Steak.
Pizza.
Pizza?
Pepperoni with a stuffed crust.
Collard greens and some homemade macaroni and cheese is like the best.
If I could describe America in one word.
That's a huge question.
I don't know.
The best thing that I can give it is opportunity.
Land of opportunity.
Interesting.
Playful.
Resilient.
It's a place where you can create your own opportunities, where anything is possible.
I would say connection.
Diverse.
Perseverance.
But America is just a beautiful collage of people of different ethnicities.
Phenomenal culmination of vast cultures.
Awesome.
Complicated.
Freedom.
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 Freedom to do what you want. Freedom to pursue your goals.
Freedom of speech or to vote.
I'm concerned that we're losing some of that.
Like they get to do what they want to do and they're free to do it.
I would say home.
My home. Indian country.
Ooh. If I had to describe America in one word,
I would say confused.
Complicated.
I would probably choose fear right now.
Total chaos.
Community organizing.
There's a lot of hidden features about it with poverty and everything.
I think in a lot of ways, Americans should be angry.
I feel like I can criticize America, but it's not under the threat of anything happening to me.
It's a glass window. It looks nice, but it's see-through.
There's always a lot of fighting.
I did 13 months in Vietnam.
In the military.
Marine Corps.
My mom was a military kid.
My dad was in World War II.
I've learned there are things that I'm more privileged to being in America.
What is your favorite thing about America?
The landscape.
The national parks, just how beautiful the land is.
The water and the mountains.
The agriculture, it's the strongest in the world, in my opinion.
We're living in England and thinking a 4-hour trip's a long time.
I love almost everything about it.
It's the greatest nation on earth.
Sometimes you can go to restaurants and they have your favorite food.
4th of July.
Favorite thing about our country is the opportunity to be whatever you want to be.
As long as it's not hurting anybody, that's a good thing.
I think just freedom to live life as you want and pursue those things that you want to pursue.
We can go to school, get educated.
Know that you have an opportunity to become the best version of yourself.
The freedom.
I'm a proud American.
America has taught me one thing.
No matter where I am in the world, I can deal with anything because of this country.
It's a privilege to get to live here.
As much as we talk about the American Revolution as the fight for equality and justice for we the people, Americans have always struggled to define who we the people are and what the promise of this country actually is.
The thing about it is that we are seeing those shortcomings and seeing those problems, and we are saying we can change these things.
Like a family, even if we're not related, we can still stay together.
Have you ever heard about the Revolutionary War?
No. Yeah. No.
Our keynote speaker this evening is J.D. Tovey, Executive Director of the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation and an enrolled member proudly identifying as Cayuse and Joseph Band Nez Perce. He has a master's in urban planning and certificate in urban design from the University of Washington and is completing a PhD in urban design and planning. His research centers on tribal planning, land tenure, and knowledge transfer. JD served as CTUIR's Tribal Planning Director for nearly a decade before becoming Deputy Executive Director in 2023, Interim Executive Director in 2024, and Executive Director in 2025. Thank you for being with us. We look forward to what you have to share. Let's welcome JD.
Good evening, everybody. It's really great to be here. Thank you for inviting me here. It's an honor to reflect with you on the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. It's an event often described as a moment in time, but one that, from my perspective, is far more than a historical chapter. For most Americans, the Revolution began in 1776 and ended in 1783. But in truth, revolution is not a discrete moment in history. It's an ongoing condition of the American identity. The very idea of America was born from rebellion and from reimagining what is possible. The spirit of transformation has been carried forward for better and for worse ever since. The revolution did not end. It became part of who we are. Years later, when the founders wrote a more perfect union in the preamble of the Constitution, they were not declaring completion, they were issuing a challenge. The phrase, a more perfect union, acknowledges the perfection is not static. It's an aspiration, a call to action, and a responsibility to keep working towards justice, inclusion, and understanding across generations. Despite what some of our originalist friends might say, the Constitution was never meant to be a monument, evidenced by the ability to even just have it amended. Despite what, it was meant to be a living document, a mirror that reflects who we are and who we still need to become. Long before 1776, before Jefferson and Franklin, before Boston and Philadelphia, there were democracies here. Sovereign systems of government rooted in balance, consensus, and community already existed across this continent. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy of the Iroquois, the Coast Salish, and even our own peoples of the Cayuse, Umatilla, and Walla, and many others lived within systems that valued logic, reason, dialogue, respect, and reciprocity. The great American experiment did not emerge from a vacuum. It grew from a land already rich with examples of self-government and collective responsibility. The seeds of democracy were uniquely grown and planted here long before the revolution gave them a new form. In this recent film, one of the speakers said, "To believe in America rooted in the American Revolution is to believe in possibility." She went on to say that even those who were denied freedom, specifically those alluding to those who were enslaved or displaced, believed in something that was worth fighting for, that possibility. I admit that's a little whitewashed. It feels a little easy to say that in retrospect. But if we strip away that sentimentality, there's a kernel of truth in that. The revolution was never solely about what was, it was about what could be. And the same question remains with us today. How do we move closer to become that more perfect union? Revolution does not always look like muskets and declarations. Sometimes it looks like reconciliation and partnership. Sometimes it's about listening instead of defending, or about standing together in the face of difference. The more perfect union is not only about this nation, it's about us individually and interpersonally. It's about how we treat each other and how we choose to learn from one another and how we build shared futures even from difficult pasts. For those that are tribal members, that sounds a lot like our Tumanwet, our natural law that dictates how we treat each other and how we treat the world around us and how we expect the world to treat us if we do so well. That is what makes gatherings like this so meaningful. The partnership even between the Whitman College and the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Reservation, despite the history of our namesakes, is one small but powerful expression of that ongoing revolution. As is often said, we don't forget, but we often have to move forward together, collaborating in education and in understanding and in shared respect. But here we are, and that too is America, messy, complicated, imperfect, but still trying. As we mark our 250th anniversary, perhaps the real question is not how far we have come since the revolution, but how do we continue it? How do each in our own way fulfill the promise of possibility, How do we ensure that our partnerships and our communities and our daily choices move us closer and not farther from that more perfect union? The American Revolution never ended. It lives on, not in our textbooks, but in our willingness to believe that we can do better, that we can be better, and that together we can keep shaping this experiment towards justice, equality, and hope. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you, JD, for sharing your expertise on tribal sovereignty as our keynote speaker and providing solid content on this topic as we transition into the panel conversation. I invite the rest of the panelists up to the platform to join JD. I want to take a moment to introduce our panelists and moderator. Panelist Joel Satterwhite is a Whitman College student and recipient of the Šináata Scholarship. He is a member of the Psychology Club and the Indigenous Peoples Education and Culture Club. He is from Pendleton, Oregon, and a descendant of the Cayuse, Walla, and Nez Perce tribes. After completing an AA degree at Blue Mountain Community College, he entered the workforce and had a successful entrepreneurial sales training career. Recently, Joel returned to college to study psychology and theater, inspired by his late grandmother Kathleen Gordon's dedication to community and education. He says he looks forward to proving that it's never too late to follow your dreams. Panelist Miracle Edmiston serves as the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation Senior Youth Leadership Council Vice Chair. She is the daughter of parents Jackie Edmiston and Chris Weisenflew, and biological mother Kristen Speedis. Miracle is an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation and a Pendleton High School student. She has served on the Youth Leadership Council for 4 years and also serves on her school's council as student body secretary. She is active in cheer, dance, and tennis, and has earned accolades for choir, CTUIR Toastmasters, and National Honor Society. She serves as Japan Exchange Ambassador for 2025 and ASTRA President. Moderator Anna King is a senior correspondent for Northwest Public Broadcasting. Throughout her career, Anna has spent days collecting wild celery, roots, and huckleberries with the women of the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation and has a deep respect for Northwest tribes. She directed the new Northwest Public Broadcasting short documentary, Wrecked, about shipwrecks and indigenous communities on the Northwest Coast. Anna also created the popular podcast, Ghost Heard, and produced the short film, Billy's Magic, which garnered a regional Emmy nomination. Anna has earned several awards, including Washington State University's Woman of the Year, and this fall was named a Change Maker by Humanities Washington. Please welcome our esteemed panel and moderator, Anna King.
All right. I'm just so happy and thrilled to be here this evening, and thank you to Whitman College and the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation for partnering with us with Northwest Public Broadcasting for this great event. As your local NPR and PBS station, we're committed to serving communities across the Northwest with local, trusted journalism, music, arts, inspirational storytelling. Together, we all contribute to the story that is America. To our audience, I'll be coming to you with questions at the end of our conversation. So I think that you'll want to put your thinking hats on and think about what you'd like to ask our esteemed panelists. I've had the chance to speak with our panelists individually before tonight, so I'm just going to jump right in. Coming to you, JD. Some people talk about the American Revolution as a struggle for identity, survival, and self-determination. How do you see Indian country carrying all those values of resilience and renewal, and what progress stands out to you in your community?
It's interesting. We reviewed some of these questions beforehand, and I said, I don't know if I have enough time. I'll eat all this up because I can talk for hours on this. The very fact that we exist in even we're a sovereign nation. We have a constitution. We have a direct relationship with the federal government. We meet with the federal government as well as the states. Every day is these struggles and battles. I've in my past work, I've worked with cities and counties, and those stories and the conversations you have with your county commissioners or your city council member, or your local community group, the conversation is different. It's about potholes, and it's about taxes for land property. All those conversations happen, and those conversations happen to the tribe too. But then also we talk about these federal relationships with the president, and federal relationships with our senators, and federal relationships with our agencies, and the responsibility they have, those trust responsibilities they have per the government, per the treaty. So it's every single day is about that resilience. Every single day is about preserving that, because you don't just have it and enjoy it. It's something you have to fight for every day. It's something you have to show up to and work for every day. And it's something that you have to explain every day. And it's something you have to also kind of even explain to ourselves. What does this mean, and where we came from? As the generations go on, that it changes, and the battle changes, and the conversations change. In the beginning in 1855, it was about a treaty of peace and conflagration that happened here, just 4 blocks away from here. And then it changed into, allotment and termination, and those conversations were happening. And then it was the new government cycles throughout every single president. It was a new challenge, and that lives on today. And so it's about showing up. And I think it's now I'm going to start talking in circles because I can just go on about this for hours. But I think that's kind of the theme of it is that resilience is the thing that we learned from our ancestors and the people that come before us, is just to show up every single day, because you have a fight every single day.
Show up every day because you have a fight every day. Thank you for those words. I want to move over to Miracle. Would you tell us how tribal sovereignty means to you, and how do you practice sovereignty personally and within your community?
The thing about tribal sovereignty is you could ask 7 different people about tribal sovereignty, and you could get 7 different answers each time. So this is really kind of almost an opinionated question, even though there should be facts behind it. How I view tribal sovereignty is the right to govern your own in the political sense. But we have tribal sovereignty every day in just smaller versions of that, especially as a student. Tribal sovereignty gives me the ability to apply for scholarships, especially to me. And that is really powerful in that sense, because of my tribe, I get these special opportunities. Tribal sovereignty in the government way is very special because you have the different levels. You have the state level, you have the American level, and we are very special in that way because each tribe has their own way to run it. And that was presented in our Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, I believe. Sorry, we just learned that. And it talks about tribal sovereignty in that sense. So we're very fortunate to have that in our Constitution written down just for us. So, yeah. And how I practice tribal sovereignty is in many different ways. We have the right to fish, hunt, and pick berries on our own lands that we originally had fought for in the American Revolution. Whether if we were fighting with the Americans or the British, we were fighters in that sense. Tribal sovereignty is practiced every day, though. If you're fighting for something that is yours, tribal sovereignty and sovereignty in just in general. So, yeah.
Thank you. I want to bring this to the whole panel, but maybe Joel, we'll start with you. I want to ask, is the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation's tribal sovereignty threatened or challenged, and in what ways do you believe that is?
Unlike my counterparts here, I don't talk as much, so this will be very brief. I do think that there are some immediate threats to our tribal sovereignty. The most prevalent that comes to mind is the checkerboarding of our land that was created by the Allotment Act. That land was guaranteed to us under the sovereign law of the land in the Constitution, and then it was just given away without our consent. And that has created a lot of jurisdictional issues and a lot of self-governance issues. In addition to the jurisdictional issues, Public Law 280 made it so that we cannot fully prosecute crimes on our land committed by non-natives, even if they were committed on tribal lands, which has caused a lot of issues like the missing and murdered indigenous people, it creates a very complicated balance, which is not always favorable to indigenous people.
Would the other two, would you guys like to take a little bit?
I would, it's interesting. I know I've been involved with the board in development of board priorities for many years, and every 2 years when we have a new election come up, it's almost always like treaty rights is somehow a board priority, like some aspect of treaty rights. And for most of at least our modern history, the last 10, 15, 20 years, those board priorities or those focuses have been about defending treaty rights and litigating our treaty rights and going out there and fighting those fights. And I remember it was about 6 years ago, I think, when the board came on and they kind of, let's take a different look at this. Maybe it was 8 years ago. Let's take a different look at this and educate people about our treaty rights and do these projects and kind of do these outreaches and these educational pieces. And so I think, and what we've seen as a result of that is as time has gone on, as more people know our treaty rights and don't just, see us showing up and fighting in courtrooms and threatening lawsuits and stuff like that for access to usual and custom lands and all those things that we're doing, what we start seeing is that when we spent the time educating people and getting to know people and letting them understand what our purpose of the treaty rights are and what the importance is to them for our treaty rights and the advantageousness for them for us to have treaty rights in their landscapes, is that they start defending us even when we're not in the room. There's only so many rooms, there's only so many tribal people, and there's only so many people that are working in the government to actually be in those rooms, whether it's in the state capitals or either state capitals or in the halls of Congress. And there's these conversations going all the time. And what we started seeing is that quickly after a few years, we started seeing that if we weren't in the room, somebody else was like, well, where's the tribe at? The tribe should be here as well. And then even if we couldn't be there, they would start representing us and saying that, well, don't forget the tribes also have rights here too, and that they need to be involved. And so I would say that, that we have threats all over the place. I think we have people out there who think we shouldn't exist and are still actively fighting those things. So fighting that fight, and we have tabs on them and we know what they're doing and where they're going. But the other side of it is that if you put in the work and put in the time, then other people are there for us and to fight for us even when we can't be in the room or we don't even know the room exists. And then that gives us an opportunity to learn about that room existing, and then we can get to that table.
Miracle, would you like me to start the question again, or you got it?
Maybe one more time.
Okay. So does the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation's tribal sovereignty, is it threatened or challenged? And in which ways?
I would say that there are definitely some ways that the tribal sovereignty is threatened. Even though we do have our own right to vote for our own governor, but we only have so much control in our tribe because we do get most of our money from the casinos that we have to ask the state or the national level for. So is that really tribal sovereignty if we don't have control of how much we get? And you go back to our 18 money as tribal miners, for the longest time it was taxed by the government. And in recent years it has been untaxed, so there's more tax on that, so that could be opposed to tribal sovereignty or opposed to it being challenged. But it's just interesting to look at. We do have tribal sovereignty in many ways, but at the same time, the state or the national government does kind of like pick a piece at that and bend its way of how it can control our tribal sovereignty. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Miracle. I'm coming back to you, JD. What are the things that you wish the general public understood about treaties and treaty rights?
It's really hard to explain because sometimes, because of the size of our nation, because of the size of our population, because of the various levels and the type of activities we have, whether it's government or business development or social work or even educational work, sometimes we look like a city, sometimes we look like a county, sometimes we look and sound like a corporation, sometimes we sound like a intergovernmental agency, sometimes we sound like a state, and sometimes we sound like a fed, fed. And so we exist across all that entire architecture, and that's the biggest challenge, I think, is to understand that we have to exist and operate across that entire architecture every day. We're constantly in government-to-government relations with the states and the feds. We are peer-to-peer to the feds and to the states. And in fact, most people don't even realize this, is that all legislation from the federal government should stay as I can't remember what the exact language is, but there's like this this preamble language that is in bills from the federal government that states that, as to be proclamated towards the states or something like that to handle that law down. Those laws are actually should say, and usually do say, as proclaimed and proclamated out to the various states and tribes. And so we have at least as much independence and sovereignty as the various states. And so that's why we see the state as kind of the peer-to-peer. We're subordinate to the federal government by treaty, and we kind of became a protector dependent upon the treaty by the federal agency. We still are a sovereign nation that is separate but equal. A lot of us consider ourselves to have dual citizenship for our reservation, but also with the U.S. government. And then see ourselves as peer-to-peer with the state. That said, we still have to work with the counties and local jurisdictions like that too. So it's very complex it's really interesting to kind of operate across that entire architecture every single day. Yeah.
That sounds like a lot. Yeah. A lot to track. Yeah. Audience, like I said earlier, we'll be coming to you at the end of this presentation for your questions. So think about it, keep it in your pocket. We'll be right to you. I want to ask Joel, what do you wish non-Native people knew about what it's like growing up Indigenous in America today?
I would say I want them to consider what it's like to live in a state of constant tension, that the American Revolution and everything that followed it is not just history for us, it's a present day reality in all of our communities. The intergenerational trauma from boarding schools, from forced relocation, from the massacre of our people, that's still a reality that our families are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. There's also an identity battle. A lot of our school curriculum, and this is getting better, but a lot of our school curriculum presents our people as a vanished people when we are still very much alive. So I would just keep in mind that our youth carry the burden of defending that identity on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that of vanished people when we're very much alive. It's really beautiful. I wonder, JD, if looking ahead, what is the future that you are working to create for the next generation and beyond, and what is your hope for your community?
Some of the challenges we work in is that, it's kind of like my speech kind of alluded to, is that you're not going anywhere. So how do we live with each other? And I think that's a kind of a raw assessment that we have to kind of come to terms with, I think, Because for us, I mean, and people like I see our community out here, every single one of us, well, let me ask this question. How many, besides Governor Stevens, how many people in here can name a person that was at the treaty signing just 3 blocks away? Or was related to somebody at the treaty signing 3 blocks away? How many natives can name people or related people to the treaty signing that were today and can name those people? So it's the history that we're speaking about is incredibly intimate. When you talk about the Joseph Band racing or trying to run away to Bear Paw, that was some anonymous cavalry of people of militia and that were rallied to chase the Joseph Band all the way to Bear Paw. Now people don't know those names, but we know those names. We know, like my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother Palutzpu and in a Niatway, they were there. They were children that were put on the back of my little man chief's horse. The last time they saw their father, it was him slapping the back of the horse and telling him to run north and don't look back. So we know these stories intimately. That's the people that we have in that story. And so that's the history that we live in every day, and these are stories we hear every single day. But then through all that, then how do we actually pick ourselves up and then we move forward with that? So we live with this trauma, we live with this experience with ourselves and with each other, and we hear these stories, but then still we have to be successful and move forward. So it's not so much like you see our success now. I think just in the last 30 years, our success has just been absolutely phenomenal, and it's a testament to the power of resiliency because we weren't just equal and try to become better. It's like we started at the very bottom. We were flat on our back. One of my favorite stories was Atway J. Minthorn. He was one of our tribal elders back in the early 80s, went to talk to, this is the early 80s, 50-60% unemployment rate, rampant substance abuse issues. There was people were leaving the reservation and wouldn't look back and didn't want to come back. And anyway, he was on the board. It was a volunteer thing that happened in the evenings sometimes that they can get people to find and come together. And he went down to the county commissioner or city chamber of commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce of Pendleton were like, "What are you doing here, Jay? What brings you to town?" And it said, we're talking out here. We really, really want to build an economy out here for the tribe. And he kind of a room full of chuckles. I'm like, oh, good luck with that. And now we're the largest employer in Umatilla County. We're the largest employer in Eastern Oregon. We're one of the largest employers in the entire region. We, in many ways, saved Pendleton, I think. I am not afraid to say that. I think Pendleton was kind of falling apart and dissipating. And I think that we didn't just start at 0 and moved up. We started like -1,000 and now we're moving up. And so I think that is the testament to resilience I think that we have, and how do we kind of pull together. And through all this trauma and through all this history, the lesson that I've always learned and was raised with, especially in the 80s and 90s, was that rising waters lifts all boats. And so despite all these things that have happened, we still have to work together and be friends together in order to be able to be successful, because we have to work together in order to be able to do those things. So.
The largest employer in Umatilla County. It's really incredible. I've seen a lot of the industry that you're speaking of, and it's really remarkable. If you haven't been to the museum there, it's worth a go. It's really beautiful, and all of the industry that you have there. So I'd like to ask the whole panel now. And maybe we'll start with our other female here. What are some things the general public can do to elevate and support tribal sovereignty?
The general public could help our tribal sovereignty. Sorry. Could we come back to me?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. How about Joel? We'll start with you.
I would say the most prevalent way is to change your mindset about how you think of tribal sovereignty. Stop viewing tribes as special interest groups and view us, like JD said, as the sovereign governments that we are. We are fully self-governing entities. I would say demand that your politicians truly practice interaction and consultation over policies that would affect shared resources and shared lands. And then understand that our treaty rights are not special privileges that were given to us, but it is by the U.S. Constitution, the supreme law of the land.
Coming to you, Miracle.
Whenever I talk about the work I do on the youth council to my peers at school, they never really understand like what I'm really fighting for and the things that we are so passionate about, because they think that we have our res now, like we got what we wanted was land, right? Like that's what we wanted. Well, yes, that is in the sense of like what we fought for and what we've been fighting for all through these years. But I don't think they understand the tribal sovereignty of it. So like you said, just understanding what tribal sovereignty really is. And I know I said earlier there's different ways to interpret it, but maybe even understanding, coming to terms of like, have you even heard it before, of trying to understand our people and what we are still trying to fight for. That is one of the main things I would probably say, is just trying to come to understand our people and understand that yes, we have privileges now, but there's still generational trauma coming through to us that made us so resilient. So we are built off resilient people, and it still lives in us today. It lives in our hearts and our souls and our blood. We need to understand that we were once viewed as savage people, but we were just fighting for what is ours. We're passionate people.
Okay, good.
Oh, you want me again? Okay.
Yeah.
I think one of the best things you can do, I think, I can go so many different ways with this. So as a planner, so I work on the national stage for planners of the Tribal Indigenous Planning Division. And what we get a lot of, especially other planners who, because obviously it's a land thing, a land jurisdictional question, especially between county planners, city planners, tribal planners, is how do we even talk to you guys? How do we approach you guys? Like what? And I always get kind of, it's interesting because people are almost scared to like offend us. And then that becomes a barrier to communication. That people start dancing on eggshells, worrying that they're going to offend us. Believe me, you're not going to offend us. We've heard it all. And we're going to laugh at ourselves more than anybody. It's, no offense, I can see the color of the room, but no one will get more offended at a joke about Indians than other white people. But we tell our jokes about ourselves, we do all those things, and we're people trying to make a living, people trying to run a government, we're people trying to live a day. Come have coffee with us. Julie will take you pick huckleberries. I swear to God, she'll take you to go pick huckleberries, and she'll give you half the huckleberries you pick. You know, I mean, those we'll do that. I mean, like we'll share, we'll come and hang out with us. You know, if you really want to go to Longhouse, we'll take you down and give you half a salmon. I mean, those things, it's about sharing in community, and this region is our community. So it's about how do we get to know each other better, so that you understand what it means to be sovereign and what it means to have a culture that has been on the brink of extinction for a long time. I'm often reminded, there's even over here at the Whitman Mission, at the fort, I can't remember what it was, years ago. I remember my grandmother and her brother were there, and one of the things talking about the Cayuse, the Wallaiapu, and the whole Marcus Whitman incident, and all those things. And it said that, you know, there's no more Cayuse, and you know, and the Cayuse are extinct people. My grandmother, who's full-blood Cayuse, and her brother, full-blood Cayuse, are cracking up about it, and they dance around like, but that's what their response to it. I mean, people with the best humors are people who lived with trauma. I mean, so they will laugh with you. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I think is come enjoy a meal with us, go to sweat with us, go hunting. Maybe not hunting, don't go hunting, but we'll go berry picking with us. I mean, come do those things and experience our world and see. You'll learn all kinds of foods that grow right outside your yard that you didn't even know you could eat. You know, they'll go pick berries that you didn't know were eaten. Before you know it, you'll suddenly see how wide and bountiful this landscape is for all the foods and the medicines that it can provide you. Because it's not just huckleberries, it's not just couch, it's not just those things that you kind of see or hear about. It's thousands of things, you know, that can grow here and can be partaken of and to sustain the community and the people that live here. So. Sorry, I didn't mean to volunteer Julie to pick berries with you, but.
I want to ask now, it's often said that Native American people have to walk in two worlds. And what does that mean to you? And we're gonna kind of popcorn through, and this is for the whole panel. So maybe we'll start at the far end there, Joel.
To me, that would mean that we have to be masters of adaptation. We have to participate and live in our communities according to our religion and our culture and the ethics and laws that we live by. And then we have to go out into the greater world, and we have to learn how to apply those ethics to a modern world that is very different. So learning how to apply the ethical laws that our ancestors gave us and still be successful in business and still be successful in media. That's what that would mean to me.
Living in two worlds as a Native American, what it means to me is being able to practice your traditions with your family and your Native community, but also going out and living in the white man world of trying to blend in, and not necessarily blend in, but trying to adapt to their nature of how they live their lives. And as like a student, I attend a predominantly white school. Talking about like the work I do out at the reservation compared to what I do in school is something that a lot of my students at school are not really used to, and trying to explain to them what I do is sometimes confusing because they have that view of like stern, like almost at times, and I have to keep my guard up of like what I believe in while also trying to get them as educated as of what I know. And it's not necessarily always like a debate fight, but it's more so like an educational session with my friends that they don't really learn at school, because in history we're also taught by Americans and stuff, which is normal. But also learning about the American Revolution, which I just went over a couple weeks ago with my class. It was kind of cool to see my teacher. He would give us an assignment about like the American Revolution, but he also had us do an assignment about the Native Americans' view. So trying to include us in that kind of sense was very educational, and it touched my heart in that sense, because I was appreciated that we also were affected by the American Revolution in not all negative ways, but in also positive ways as well. But yeah.
Thank you.
I'll go quickly because it's interesting. Like in my personal story, I feel like it is some way an inverse. I didn't grow up on the reservation. I grew up off reservation in Idaho, and I'm an only child on my Indian side. I'm an only child and have a half brother on the other side. But and so I grew up away from the community a lot, and so even coming back and moving back to the reservation, I was like 35 when I moved back to the reservation. I worked there over summers when I was in school, in college, and so I always. I was partially raised by my grandmother, but she was a full-time nurse. And so my grandmother wasn't, she wasn't teaching me the language, and she was full-time nurse, a nurse administrator even. And so it was interesting coming back to the reservation because I felt a bit of an imposter syndrome, and even I would say, my hair is short, and I'll admit I'm white passing. And so what does that mean to even be on the reservation? And do I have authority to say anything? And, and it's been a challenge even for me going up through leadership as a planning director and enforcing the landscape. I mean, we deal with this checkerboard all day long with the community and the counties. And then moving into the director position, and then moving with the board of trustees, and then I'll never forget the first time during morning prayer on Monday mornings. We have a morning circle on prayer in the rotunda. And the first time somebody asked me to pray, I was like it didn't feel authentic. Like I didn't feel like I was authentic enough. And so I think it's an interesting thing that I almost feel the inverse of walking into worlds, because I didn't know if I was allowed to. But I would say that it's interesting because all the songs I've actually learned in the boardroom. We open and close all of our meetings with a song and a prayer, and all the songs I've learned have been in the boardroom. And it's weird to think, I mean, and so I think I have a very different story than many other people on the reservation who learned those stories at the knees of their grandparents. In some ways, I kind of came back to it, and I'm learning those stories as from a position of leadership in the organization. So it's something I'm still wrestling with in many ways, and so into what that means as myself as being a Native person.
May I add?
Yeah.
I'm in almost the exact same boat as you. I grew up in a family. My dad is full-blown Filipino and my stepmom is white. Me and my siblings are all tribally enrolled. And we grew up in that sense of like my parents trying to teach us our ways, but they don't know it. So they would try. My dad grew up here, like around this town, and he was always on the reservation. So he was teaching me and my siblings what his knowledge of what he knew, but we never like learned the language or like anything like that. We just learned mainly history of like who we were, and they always tried to keep us involved. And when the youth council like came to my school, my parents were like, well, you have to do that. Yeah. You have to. And I was excited though, because I got to learn more about my culture, but from my culture's perspective. So it's like, it was more educational to me, and I also felt like that kind of outsider. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not as educated as everyone else here, but you learn through time goes on, and you start to see the history, like the American Revolution, you start to see it more from a Native eye once you learn it from them. And the best people to learn Native American history is from Native American elders. Genuinely, I've heard so many stories just being a part of youth council and having all those opportunities. Every trip, every meeting, I learned something new about my culture, and that was the main reason why I joined youth council. But yeah, I just wanted to touch up on that too.
All right, we're almost to time, so I hope you've been keeping that question in your head. And we have just one more question, which is, what are some examples of resilience and culture still held close within the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, and what does that look like into the future? And we're going to move.
I can't answer that. We just completed our elections, and our democracy and our selection of our leadership. I think that's I'll just leave it there. I think our leadership and the intimate knowledge and the intimate relationship with our leadership with the tribal people. We have the most politically active community. Our election we just had was 850 voters, I believe. We only have about 1,800 tribal members that are voting age in the tribal membership. So that means we have like a 45-50% rate of votership in our community, which is unheard of anywhere else in the country. If you get over 10, 15, 20% of national elections, then you're kind of doing good. So I think our engagement on all these levels for all of our tribal membership is a big part of that.
Thank you. Our resilience is shown through each ages. I mean, look at the youth council. I feel like that's pretty resilience of us including every single age that we can, from sixth grade and up, basically. I would say that was one of our more resilient things, getting everyone involved.
Yeah, I'll add on to what JD said with not only with that level of participation, but also with some of the recent victories we've had on like economic fronts with the reintroduction of the Chinook salmon into the Columbia River and some other various political victories that we've won has shown our resilience.
Can I add one real quick point? Yeah. I want to tell a story about the youth council, and I'll go real quick. We're building a new school at Nikiyaway Education Center, and it's a high school as well as an education center for our education department. And we've been through 100 meetings, and it's a $30 million building, and it's a lot of stuff, and it was over budget and all these things. And we were giving presentations to the Board of Trustees, and those meetings were pretty quick, half hour, 45 minutes. This is the building, this is the plans, these are the designs, this is the funding mechanism, this is interest rates, all those things. All the things that happen when you build a building in a public sense. And then we had gone to a lot of public outreach and everything like that. But after that work session, the board says, go present this to the general council or to the youth council, and just make sure that they're aware of it and everything like that too. Especially since there's gonna be a lot more capacity, we're trying to recruit students to go into the new community or the charter school. It's a charter Nikiyaway charter school. And so I went to meet with them, and the youth councils, I think it was the first time I went to the youth council, and they meet on Sundays, and they're like full-on meetings, and there's a lot of kids that show up on Sundays for these youth councils. So it's incredibly engaged. And so I just went to show these pretty pictures of the building. They grilled me for 4 hours. What are the interest rates? Who's paying for this? What's the bond? Who's holding the bonds on this? I'm like, I was scrambling, asking all the questions. I'm like, this is our future leadership right here. You know, 8th graders asking what the interest rates were. I mean, I was like, and so I have a huge heart for the youth council because they stand up and they hold everybody accountable.
I just want to thank all of our panelists for coming and speaking tonight and your generosity of time with us. And we just have a very short time for the Q&A, so please be brief, ask a single question, use the catch boxes that will be passed around, and remember to always keep the dialogue kind and respectful. And so we'll have a couple of our members come up here and grab these catch boxes.
Did the checkering of the land that had been native land for a while, did that happen? Was that a gradual erosion, or was that done under a certain president, or how did that happen?
The history on that was, golly. I'm background planning, so I'm trying to how to simplify this. So in the late 1800s, there was the Slater Act, the General Allotment Act, and a handful of other things. And the intention of those were to basically allot all the reservations that were held in communal ownership of all the tribes. And the intention was to actually break these up into chunks of property to turn us all into farmers. That narrative that people often heard. And so then what ended up happening is that these were all blocked off into these allotments. And the allotments were handed off into individuals who then quickly lost them, either through improper taxation or through inheritance, or just sold them off because there was nothing you could do with them. And so then the surplus of whatever wasn't given out after a period of time, whatever wasn't handed out to individuals, that was from like 1888 to like 1927, 28, 29. Whatever wasn't handed off was then sold on the open market. And so if you look at the CTUIR allotment, it'll be interesting because the most valuable wheat lands in the north, if you want to make us farmers, give us some good land. All the most valuable wheat lands in the top and the top half of the part of the reservation were all sold off. So they were systematic. So the good idea was to turn us all into farmers. The good idea was to turn us into farmers, but then all the best lands, we were given all the worst lands, and the best lands were reserved and sold off to non-Indians. And it's literal checkerboard. It's literal from piece to piece. And there's a whole other like Supreme Court stuff I could rattle on for hours about it, but yeah.
Where do you see yourselves as a whole in, say, 10 or 20 years?
Hopefully in graduating from some sort of elite college with either a master's or a doctorate degree. I really want to study into kinesiology to become a physical therapist, potentially. My mind has kind of been changing. But either there, being a physical therapist, just graduating, or settle down in a town, maybe back to Pendleton. Definitely a smaller town. Still fighting, still being involved with my community, though, as in like native lands, wherever I end up, making sure people know that I am native and being proud of that.
Do you feel that there is a cowboys and Indians kind of stereotypical portrayal of relations in the parade associated with the Pendleton Roundup?
Do you want to take that, Joel? What was the question? No. What was the question?
Thanks. But that's real. I don't think that. I mean, that's real. I mean, there's not. Those aren't stereotypes. Those are people being real. I mean the natives in there. That's real, and the people, the ranchers, and the people. I don't know. I'm kind of curious about the question because I from living in Pendleton for these years and getting to know people, I think it's just real. So I don't call it a stereotype. It's just people being real.
I'm just curious, what role is tribal sovereignty going to play in green energy? For example, the small nuclear reactors and solar and the land development. And something I heard recently was you can't stop it, so we might as well figure out how to work with it. But when you look at the Yakima tribe, they have joined to try and fight that pumped storage facility that's proposed in Goldendale. So is Umatilla tribe going to take any kind of stance on something like that when it comes up?
Officially, we have, unofficially, we have a energy policy that is specifically looking at nuclear and small modular nuclear reactor, as well as the other green energy stuff, but it's not finalized yet. And so the board of trustees is still in consideration and review of that, and is currently getting reviewed by the committees and commissions. We have a committee commission process that provides feedback on all aspects of the tribal government, and then provides information back up to the board of trustees. And so, unfortunately, I mean, I'd love to talk to you more about it. That's as much as I'm allowed to speak about, because we don't have anything else. It's a very long, detailed document. And I want to be clear, it's not about, if you can't beat them, join them. That's not the case. It's like, if you can't beat them, we have to be at the table to make sure we can guide them. So it's a little bit of a nuance challenge, I think, and that's where we get into consultation, early, often, and meaningful consultation. That's a whole kind of area of tribal law, and then also our fundamental responsibility of protecting your sovereignty and protecting your natural resources and treaty rights for not only for ourselves but the entire region.
Just one more question as we're at time.
Okay, so we'll have one last question.
If we want to educate ourselves, where do we get more information about history, about tribal sovereignty? Where do we find more information about all of this?
The easiest place would be just the CTUIR website.
And always talking to like tribal members too. Like I said earlier, always finding a connection to a tribal elder. You can learn the most from them. But there's also tons of articles online, and you can read about like the work that the youth council is doing, or just the work that different tribes are doing, and maybe even learning about the different histories of different kinds of tribes as well.
The other way is you could seek out indigenous artists or authors and consume whatever content they are producing.
And, and if you have a question, and if you're friends with like a Native American, feel free to ask them. Like what he was saying earlier, just ask. Like no need to like think about if we're going to be offended or not. It's better just to ask and find an answer than to be uneducated about it.
And I always plug Umatilla Cultural Institute. It's great. I mean, it's free Fridays. First Friday of the month is free. You get fry bread, and you can go get some fry bread tacos and do all that stuff. It's really cool. And if you call it earlier, you get a docent tour as well. So you don't just walk to the museum, but you can actually go with somebody on a guided tour of it, and it's just a few bucks. You know. Umatilla Cultural Institute in Pendleton, Oregon, and the first Friday is free. And even if it's not a first Friday, I think it's still $5 or $8, I think, for an entry. It's been a while. And then also, if you call ahead, you can also do a docent tour. So somebody there will actually walk through with you. And I think that's an extra $10, $20, I think, for a group. And then you can also do VIP docent tours where you get the venerable Bobby Connor or other, Bobby Connor is a monster in history. She's a keeper of our history. And she might go walk through with it with you and tell you the whole story too.
Thank you for participating in the audience Q&A. As we close the event this evening, I want to give special recognition and thanks to Annie Warren and the Northwest Public Broadcasting team. Whitman College. Whitman College Chief of Staff, Maggie Hart. Whitman College Special Events and Tech Support Staff, Šináata Scholar Joel Satterwhite, CTUIR Senior Youth Council Vice Chair Miracle Edmiston, and CTUIR Executive Director J.D. Tovey. I would like to thank President Bolton for supporting the work of Native American outreach and the collaborative efforts to help make this event happen. Finally, I would like to give a special thank you to the many Northwest Public Broadcasting donors who are with us here this evening. You have all made this event, yes. You have all made this event both possible and extraordinary.